And a warm welcome back, or perhaps welcome for the first time, to the 5th European Climate Change Adaptation Conference, ECCA 2021. Now, we are very excited to be able to bring this to you live from DG Research and Innovation. DG Research and Innovation is the host and the organiser of this event, and of course the webinars leading up to it, in collaboration with Horizon 2020 projects, Sincere, Cascades and Receipt, led by JPI Climate. My name is Katrina Sickle, and I'm joined by a handful of moderators to navigate us all through this fabulous journey until we close at 4 o'clock. If you have not done so already, please go to slido.com and put in the event code ECCA 2021, and that way you can take part in the polls that I will ask you to all the way until 4 o'clock. You can tweet at any time, hashtag ECCA 2021. So here we are now in the second of 3 sessions in this very, very rich journey. So what is this next session all about? So there we go. Now we have 2 panel discussions in this session, bringing adaptation solutions to life. But before the first of those, let's hear now from the Slovenian presidency of the Council of the EU, and we have the Slovenian Minister of the Environment, Andrej Vizjak. Let's hear from him.
Dear Commissioner Gabriel, participants, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking Commissioner Gabriel and the European Commission for the kind invitation to address Session 2 of this high-level event. I would also like to thank Professor Ruska Kajfež-Bogataj for a successful webinar that showcased many good adaptation practices in the wider Southeast region. Let me use this opportunity to welcome the Commission's recent adoption of the new EU climate adaptation strategy that will surely continue to pave the way for the EU to become a more climate resilient continent, contributing to a safer and more prosperous world. There are several initiatives currently going on, from research and innovation missions such as Horizon Europe missions. Many cities and towns faced adverse climate impacts and are increasing their resilience with concrete solutions. Slovenia stands ready to take the initiatives further during our presidency of the Council of the European Union. As we are all aware, adaptation processes and actions are highly context and country specific. We must therefore collectively strive to mainstream adaptation, action and form collaborative frameworks that build on existing processes and structures. These range from reducing exposure to climate change through climate proofing of all EU public and private investments, increasing adaptive capacity through adopting comprehensive risk management approaches, enhancing nature-based solutions and sustainable water management practices to better managing risks and preparing for disaster response. European, national, regional and local authorities must cooperate with each other and with their citizens to enhance synergies among processes. Many practices showcased during the webinar are shown it is possible, and I'm sure this session will highlight further good practices and experience from experts in the field. For most countries, climate change adaptation is the biggest challenge and will thus play an important role of COP26 in Glasgow. As a climate leader, the EU strives to achieve progress on the many open questions regarding global goal on adaptation and continues to promote the EU's and Member States' national and international action by actively sharing examples of good practice. We will also continue outreach and focused, enhanced diplomatic activities to assure a successful outcome of COP26 and beyond. to promote further actions by all relevant actors, public and private, the ECCA has already showcased many examples of how important knowledge and data help. The webinars undoubtedly shed a light on the EU and its wider sustainable financing strategy, setting standards high for other regions to follow, and I'm sure many will come back to watch the webinars on these important topics. However, the work is not finished, and we will have to continue to engage in improving knowledge, enhanced action, and developing new and better collaborative frameworks for action. After the webinars of ECCA and this high-level event, there is no question of where to find the best practices and how to ensure cooperation across all sectors and policies to identify win-win solutions for all. There is more than enough material for inspiration, and I thank you all for your hard work to bring these inspiring examples together, and thank you very much.
And I thank the Minister there, not least for emphasising the accessibility of all this actionable information. That's absolutely critical to ensure this collaboration. And also for saying nearer the start, you know, there is this country-specific element. That's very important, because in our next conversation, we really are going to be bringing it all down to local adaptation action. But before we come to that panel, we've just got a short clip. Again, some of those key messages which came up from the webinars organised by the European Commission, DG Research and Innovation and JPI. And these ones are delivered by Wolfgang Pfefferkorn. He is from CIPRA International and he's champion of the Acting Locally webinar. Let's have a listen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. My name is Wolfgang Pfefferkorn. I'm a regional planner and mediator working for CIPRA, an alpine environmental NGO. Together with Ingrid Konings from the University of Wageningen, I had the honor to co-organize the webinar Acting Locally. In the Transdisciplinary Advisory Board of JPI Climate, one of the co-organizers of ECCA 21, we are currently discussing a lot about stakeholder and citizens' involvement. I believe very much that the only way to bring adaptation solutions to life is by empowering people. So I have these two messages for you. Number one, climate and adaptation knowledge must be available and applicable to local contexts. Local hubs that connect people, problems, and solutions can accelerate climate action. These hubs bring together scientists, policymakers, NGOs, scientists, and investors, and are a place to innovate, learn, share, build trust and collaborate to scale and deliver impact. Message number two, climate action is all about people. When people participate in planning and implementing climate action, they feel ownership and have more capacity to deliver changes that improve well-being, contribute to social justice, and safeguard the climate system. Empowering people and building networks allows climate action to be replicated at scale. With these two messages, I would like to encourage you to get engaged in climate action in whichever context you work and wherever you are. Thanks a lot.
And thanks to Wolfgang there, not least for really articulating very clearly a couple of those messages that came out of the 9 webinars leading up to this high-level event. And now, in just a moment, we're going to meet some live speakers. So what is this next panel? And let's have a sneak peek at the speakers who are featuring at this panel on implementing local adaptation action. So just take a heartbeat of time there to see who we have. A brilliant lineup. I think you will agree that everybody who has featured so far has inspired you and has really done a fantastic job in making the content rich and really clearly answering the questions and the topics on the table. So it's a pleasure for me once again to hand over to another moderator for this panel, and this moderator is champion of the webinar on Climate Action Exchange, sharing knowledge and experience of what works across the EU. And we have the lovely Lučka Bagataj. She is researcher and professor at the University of Ljubljana, full professor at the Faculty of Biotechnology and head of the chair in agrometeorology. So I think she is going to be a fabulously well-versed and experienced person to lead this panel. So Lučka, hello. How lovely to have you with us today. Can you tell me what you're going to focus on? What do you hope to get out of this panel?
Yes, hi from Ljubljana, in the middle of the heat wave, so climate change is here. Yeah, this panel really hosts four magnificent speakers with a rich experience, and actually they are coming from Italy, from south and north, if I may say so. So I really expect them to share their experiences on the local scale, what can be done and what has already been done, what can be copied maybe by others. So yeah, to bring solutions to life, like the title of our panel.
Thank you. To really put some meat on the bones there, to empower people, as we heard from Wolfgang. So, Lučka, I'm going to leave the next 30 minutes to you, and as you know, I'll pop back at the end for a quick exchange with you. Have a lovely time with your speakers.
Okay, I'm just I can see the speakers now. Hi, everybody. We did not have so much contacts over the last days, but I hope we can really deliver the messages. What I actually anticipate is some short answers from you, and some maybe more elaborative about what you do. So let me start with a very simple question to all of you, and I just maybe ask you to answer very in a short manner. Actually, how long have you been individually dealing with climate change adaptation, and what aspect of the climate change adaptation, which is such a broad field, is the closest to you? And the order maybe of the answers, let's take the ladies first. So maybe to start with Mrs. Schlein, and then with Mrs. Dunlop, following by Gerard O'Connell and Arnold Molenaar. So Ms. Schlers, how did you get involved actually in climate change adaptation?
Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for this very kind invitation. I hope you hear me. Unfortunately, I'm traveling with the rest of the regional government of Emilia-Romagna. I've been involved for a couple of years now because it was in the European Parliament, engaged on the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. And now I'm Vice President of Regione Emilia-Romagna, responsible for the fight to inequalities and the ecological transition. So it's been, I would say, 7 years.
Wow, thank you. Yes, and Mrs. Dunlop?
Yes, good morning, everybody. My engagement has been in the last 4.5 years as the Chief Executive of EIT Climate Kick, which is the European Commission's, European Union's principal innovation initiative dedicated to tackling climate change through innovation and addressing adaptation as well as mitigation. And we have about a 10-year track record as an organization of focusing on climate change adaptation innovation, and have an extensive network developed about that. And our focus, our expertise is on climate resilient agriculture, food systems, insurance, climate risk modeling, nature-based solutions, and water and forest management. And that is very broad. The red thread is that we focus our efforts on innovation that can catalyse change at the level of whole systems, so that change is both structural and exponential. My personal background prior to working in Climate Kick was working in insurance, both within Australia and in Italy and globally. And of course, that brings one very, very quickly face to face with climate change effects and adaptation. So that's about another 15 years back.
Wow, very impressive. Thank you. So what about Mr. Gerard O'Connell? What is your
Hello all, yes, thanks for this opportunity. My first introduction to climate change was on the 1st of February 2002, when Dublin City encountered its highest tide ever recorded, and it flooded 1,250 buildings in the city. So since then I have been heavily involved in climate change from a flooding point of view. Since 2007, I'm also in charge of implementing the Water Framework Directive in Dublin City, so there are elements of climate change in that. And I'm also involved in major emergency management in the city, so that's responding to some of the impacts of climate change.
Thank you. And Mr. Arnaud Molenaar?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be in this session. I'm working at the city of Rotterdam, and my first attempt to start really working concrete on climate adaptation in the city already started in 2008 when we started the Rotterdam Climate Proof Program, an overall integrated program for the whole city. Right now, I am the Chief Resilience Officer, so to speak, at the city of Rotterdam, which is focusing on resiliency in a broader perspective, including adaptation. And I'm also seconded at the Global Center on Adaptation, which has its headquarters in the city of Rotterdam. And what keeps me busy is actually how can we accelerate adaptation in our cities, and how can we scale adaptation to as many cities as possible, starting in Europe.
Thank you. So now you can see that the panel is covering, as I mentioned, if Italy is more south, Ireland more north, and also different aspects. We have city level adaptation experiences, but also more on the political level, policy making level experiences, which is, in my view, maybe even more important, because our judgment from our panel was that actually many policymakers are still preoccupied with climate change mitigation. They seem to forget or somehow put behind efforts about adaptation, but it is crucial. It is actually maybe at this moment already heavily needed. So I would like now each of you maybe to share your broader experience, and maybe just from your point of view, because as I mentioned, some of you are more experienced in the political arena, where adaptation is, as I mentioned, at least in my opinion, not taking so seriously, but also on a very city level planning when you have to deliver solutions. So I would take the same order like we had before. So Mrs. Schlein, you mentioned your political experience also with the European Parliament, and now being a vice president of the region, Emilia-Romagna. How would you describe what actually works at the local level?
Well, we have to do many efforts. I think that for policymakers, it's high time to understand how integrated are the approaches for adaptation and mitigation. As Regione Emilia-Romagna, we have approved in 2018 a strategy for both mitigation and adaptation measures that are perfectly integrated. And at the same time, this year, even during the pandemic, we have approved a pact for work and climate to share with all the regional system all our strategic objectives when it comes to how we create a path for decarbonizing the region within 2050, sector by sector, with precise implementation strategies on how we adapt and mitigate the effects of climate change. It's going to be hard, especially for a territory like Emilia-Romagna, which is particularly fragile to extreme weather events that are creating damages to our people, our economy, to the environment, and of course also to the agriculture. So I perfectly agree with what was said before. We really need to step up our efforts on all levels and to engage with civil society organizations, engage with the economic sectors, with trade unions, in order to build a strategy that works and fits for all. But we need to be very ambitious in the objective that we aim at.
Maybe just one sub-question, because Italy is divided to many regions. So is Emilia-Romagna doing this just for this region, or you cooperate along different regions? Because sometimes it's overlapping, I guess, with some strategical steps.
Well, it's very important. If you think about it, the Agenda 2030 has a specific goal, number 17, which is on the importance of a partnership, which integrates different levels. We could write the best strategy of adaptation, but if it's on a way top-down, it wouldn't work. That's why in Regione Emilia-Romagna, we have engaged this discussion with all the stakeholders at the regional level. And it's a, let's say, a common responsibility to aim in this direction, to put our resources and also to reorient our policies at the regional level. And of course, we are working also with all the other regions. You know, there is a conference of all the 20 regions of Italy, and we need a national strategy that is at least ambitious as it is the regional strategies that we are building, both on the implementation of the Agenda 2030 and this Pact for Work and Climate that aims at decarbonizing the region, but also at reaching 100% of renewable energies by 2035. So it can only work if we work together at all levels and engage with other institutions. That's the effort that we are doing. And let me also say the commitment of regions is crucial because we are responsible for the quality of air, for the management of the coast, for example. So we are also working on the strategy to protect our coast in terms of adaptation. So we have to work with all the regions that are on the long coast of the so-called Stivale, which is Italia, the boots.
That Italy is complicated. I guess from north to south, you have so many types of climate, and I guess also very different approaches to adaptation, because one should have not fit everything. Thank you, Mrs. Schlein. So now maybe also our next speaker, Ms. Kirsten Dunlop, you have also this broad experience, as I gather, with working not just with policymakers, but also NGOs. So what do you, in your opinion, is the best approach to organize or to work together with all these levels of stakeholders?
Well, so let me speak very much as a partner, and both a partner and a complementary agency, as it were, to work with governments, regional governments, national governments, and local city governments, which is indeed what we are doing as an innovation partnership. And speak from the perspective of a practitioner, bringing the solutions to play and developing solutions with residents of cities, or with farmers and rural communities, or with landowners and landholders. So this is a voice very much from the practice of developing solutions that would enable greater resiliency and adaptation on the ground, and connecting them together and connecting them into policy and decision making that supports those commitments and also directs resources towards change. So my experience within the work that Climate Kick is doing, we have historically developed business-led solutions to tackle the impacts of climate change across multiple regions and sectors. And that we have brought that work and combined it into region scale and region level resiliency building so that we can connect solutions together. When I referred earlier to the notion of a systems innovation approach, systemic change and systems scale changes, That is what I believe is absolutely necessary to address the challenge of adapting to climate change and in adapting to climate change, generating ways of living better, living forward, building forward better at the moment in the context of COVID, but also connecting up and intersecting with our climate change mitigation efforts. By a systemic approach, systems innovation, what I mean is shifting, enlarging our focus from a tendency to take single hazard by hazard attention, so focusing on flooding or focusing on heat stress, and taking a more holistic perspective, and also enlarging our approach when we think about innovation, whether it's new businesses or technology solutions or social change or financial innovation, and instead, again, of focusing on individual solutions, looking at the relationships between solutions and connecting these multiple types of solutions together so that we are looking at, for example, how we can adapt to changes in water, in rainfall, in heat, and we can bring in nature-based solutions that address waste, water, heat, but also look at air quality, also look at buildings and so on. This is not something that happens automatically. It's very much not part of standard innovation practice. It's not part of budgeting practice. It's not even necessarily enabled in policy making easily. It's very active, deliberate work of orchestrating a set of relationships among different innovation options and solutions in partnership with governments at different scales, regional, city and national, and in partnership with local businesses and with local communities. But if I give an example, Climate Kick as a practitioner has been working with the Dolomites, with the Glasgow city region, with Andalusia and with Noord-Aquitaine. And we launched in 2019 a beta mode, a sort of testing mode of something that we called deep demonstrations, because we had a sense that what is needed in this space, as in the mitigation space, is an example, large-scale examples. What would it look like at the scale of a whole region to implement a series of interlinked initiatives that would enable climate resiliency and adaptation? Not just a single solitary example, but the whole scale. And we know that we need that urgently so that we can build confidence in committing investment and bringing decision makers and businesses into more accelerated innovation and commitments of their own business models. So perhaps if I just choose the example of Glasgow, given that we have COP this year coming up, what we have done is build on an existing local partnership in Glasgow with Climate Ready Clyde. And we've kicked off, we worked with them, or we have been working with them on a collaboration basis to help build out an adaptation strategy and build up a shared evidence base and economic arguments, and really focus on capacity building to take and use innovation approaches and policy mainstreaming. We deliberately looked at Glasgow. The historic focus has been on flooding. We expanded that to focus much more on heat, on health and well-being, so expanding it to look in more integrated ways. We ran a series of workshops. Again, I'm getting very specific just to give you a sense of what does it look like in practice. And with project partners, developed a social network analysis, looking at network maps and how are different stakeholders, residents, businesses engaged in addressing, or even more importantly, understanding before even addressing some of the challenges that are now, that are tomorrow, and that are coming. And a lot of that work then really highlighted substantive connections and issues that are between housing and building stock that is existing and in future planning, that is connected to land use decisions and assumptions, that's connected to nature-based solutions, that is connected to air quality, to agricultural practices in each of those regions, but particularly in this particular area, and also in terms of cultural connections and a sense of cultural identity, what people have an appetite, how they see themselves and what they think is possible, and community empowerment and infrastructure. So what we have built is a portfolio of multiple actions that start with, they meet people where they are, which is really in mostly incremental change to deal with climate change, and move the entire shift towards transformative action. How do we embrace climate risk as a way of achieving a much wider sustainable development program? And in that case, in doing that work, we've also been able to identify economic cases for action across 11 intervention areas, in each of which cases there is a positive economic benefit, and as a portfolio, a huge net benefit in terms of economic investment and investment return. So that begins to build the case for financing and for blended finance, which is exactly what we know we need, so that climate adaptation can start to connect to European policy making more broadly and to mitigation strategies. So it's about, I would say, in answer to your question, what do we believe is a best approach? This is there is no best answer. But what we learn is the more that we deploy multiple solutions, the more that we connect them, the more that we assume that no one individual problem or no one individual solution is the answer to everything. And the more that we look at relationships and invest in helping multiple approaches learn from and connect up and combine with each other, the faster we can move to action, and the more we can actually learn from nature itself. How do we learn from natural systems to create an effect where the whole is significantly greater than the sum of the parts, and where resiliency is a self-determining property of the system, of our human systems,
Yes,
and not
thank
something we try to impose.
Example, actually, because I just hope that Glasgow case will be well documented, that we can actually see that what comes after. Okay, we are 10 minutes left. It's time just flies. So, what about Dublin experience? So, I understand, Mr. O'Connell, you are mostly dealing with floods.
In Ireland, we have a group called CARO, which coordinates all the climate change actions, and each local authority has its own climate change adoption strategy, and my elements of that are just part of it, flooding and the Water Framework Directive. So it is all linked together. Yes, in Dublin in the last 20 years, we've seen estimated sea level rise of 13 centimetres, which is, last century it was 10 in total. So that's about twice the global average. So this is incorporated into all of our flood defences. Over the last 30 years, rainfall is estimated to have increased by 5% over the whole country, but the type of rainfall has changed as well. When I first came to Dublin, it was all drizzly rain, but now it's concentrated events. We've also seen 3 large snow events, the Beast from the East. We had a 50-year and 100-year snowstorm, and this has snow on the mountains, and when it melts, it causes flooding problems. So we've combated all of these, and as I said, in 2002, we had our highest tide that flooded 1,250 buildings. We also developed flood warning systems in the city. And we had an even higher tidal event on the 3rd of January 2014, and only 4 buildings in the city were flooded as a result of that. All of our flooding projects are multidisciplinary. Like I'm over both the flooding and the Water Framework Directive, so they're combined together. But all the rivers and that, we seem to be putting greenways in as well, which takes people out of cars. They're for pedestrians and cyclists along rivers and coastal areas. So there is a sort of a combined effort to combat the both adaptation to climate change and trying to reduce our usage of cars in the city. And we have a large strategy of cycleways in the city. We're also using SUDs and green infrastructure as far as we can, but these seem to be mainly for local events. Because of the changes in rainfall patterns, we've experienced thunderstorms, which we rarely did before. We've had 3 100 events in the last 20 years, so we have kind of local SUDs elements which have combated those, and they have been tested out and have worked fairly well in subsequent events. On the Water Framework Directive side, yeah, we've had we've a lot more dry spells, so this leads to more concentrated pollution into rivers, and all of these are linked to a growing city, which sort of pressures on our green areas and the area of the city. So the climate change is linked to a whole lot of other aspects of a growing city. We also have pressures on native species. We've erosion in rivers, more siltation, and we also have a lot of invasive species that we haven't seen before, probably because of the slight increase in temperature. So the whole lot is a multidisciplinary approach, both locally, in the local authority and at national level, to try and combat and adapt to climate change.
Yes, thank you. That's interesting, because I also believe the spatial planning is crucial and maybe the cheapest way to adapt when we talk about water management, for instance, or floods. So
yes, our current development plan is out next year, and there are significant elements of climate change, and we are improving our policies to try and get these adopted.
So what about Rotterdam? You have the same problem with sea level rise, I guess, same problem with flooding in the future. So what are your experiences that you want to share?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, where shall I start? You could say, I think it's important to share with you that Rotterdam, is quite close to the coast, of course, and we call Rotterdam as not only a port city, but also a delta city. Water is coming from all directions, the extreme rainfall, sea level rise, change of discharges in the river, groundwater level is changing. So doing nothing is not an option. And now, even with climate change, we really have to invest in adaptation. That's obvious. And I think it's important to tell that already somewhere in 2008, we were able to generate a kind of a paradigm shift in the thinking of water, not only seeing water and climate change as a threat, of course it is a threat, but also by investing in adaptation, seeing that as an opportunity to create a better city. And so we wanted to work on a better city, a more greener city with more equity, etc. And by choosing the right strategy and measures, you can deliver on all those aspects. And that's I think the core of our approach. All our measures have to add quality to the city and have to be multi-benefit solutions. And so actually you could say what one of the previous speakers, or you as a moderator, already shared with us, it's crucial to include adaptation in spatial planning. Most of the solutions are in spatial planning. And so I think you could characteristic our approach as resilience by design, and not only top-down, done from the city and the local government, but with a lot of stakeholders that are crucial in this process. So to create an overall strategy, that's, I think, a strong basis. It creates ownership amongst the stakeholders, amongst the citizens, and that's a strong starting point. Another aspect I want to elaborate on is the scale thing. And so, especially in the city, I think it's important to invest in adaptation on all scales, from the tiny scale of a tile, deep paving your garden, up to all the way of investing in, if it's needed, in a storm surge barrier. And maybe nice to tell, last year, the cities of Rotterdam and Amsterdam started a competition of deep paving their cities by removing tiles from streets and gardens and developing small facade gardens. And the national government adopted this. So this year there is a national competition of removing the tiles of the streets and your gardens. That just as a simple example, also how to involve citizens. So and back to the citizens in Rotterdam, and I guess in a lot of other cities, 60% of our city is not in public hands. Yeah? So if we want to invest in a climate and become a climate adaptive city, a climate resilient city, we also need the measures in these 60%. So we have to work together with the citizens. And right now, you see a shift from working for the citizens. It's also the adaptation is adopted by the citizens, is done by the citizens. And that's a great development. And from a local government, we support and facilitate this, well, you could say, movement on adaptation in our city. So, and one thing I want to stress is this holistic approach, and also the importance of sharing our best practices and knowledges with other cities. And like what we try to do now is to set up an EU task force on climate resilient cities together with the GRC, the Joint Research Center, and Eurocities and the Resilient Cities Network.
Okay, thank you so much. I think unfortunately our time is slowly running out. Well, what I heard or what we can summarize, all these words that come out of all these contributions is cooperation for sure with the citizens, cooperation between region, cooperation between cities. I think that hearing about Dublin and Rotterdam is especially important because 72% of Europeans will live in the cities. So yeah, such a good examples are really something that offers a cause for optimism. So thank you so much for all, and I just hope that we can meet in some other form, not just over the video in the future. So thank you so much.
And thank you very much to Lučka and to those brilliant speakers, and kudos there to Ellie Schlein. I think I used to say speakers have the ubiquitous bookshelf behind them. Those are the Zoom meetings, but look, Ellie has taken it to a whole new level, and you only dropped out once momentarily, so absolutely chapeau to you. So much there. I really do take away, there's no best approach, when we're looking at leveraging all of those stakeholder inputs, but we need to connect up multiple approaches and learn from natural systems. I really liked that emphasis there that we need to look at adaptation at all scales, really from the paving in the garden, from the paving in the cities. That was a really useful example, and that tied into what we heard in the previous session, looking at adaptation across different sectors, and I heard their spatial planning is crucial. I like that one if you're tweeting resilience by design. Before I lose you all, Lučka, what was your, I don't know, perhaps something that was surprising for you? You're an expert in this field. Did you hear something that really resonated with you there?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful how cities, as I mentioned, already have advanced in the adaptation processes and also practical solutions. But also I see that slowly but surely the adaptation is moving up the political scale, if I may say so. So I think that this ECCA 2021 really contributed also to this. So I'm really glad to be a part of it. So thank you all that participated in this panel.
Thank you very much, and to those brilliant speakers for sharing your time, your expertise and your experience, and to nourish our discussions today. So I'm going to move us on, not quite into that second panel yet, but let me remind you of something very important. We heard the words right at the end there, sharing best practice. We'll go to that fantastic library on the ECCA website because there are those usable, actionable solutions. That's what's been discussed in the lead up in those 9 webinars organised by the Commission, DG Research and Innovation, and with its partners. So please do have a look there. This is what it's all about, bringing solutions to life, inspiring you to share and to take action. So that's very critical. Hang on a second, don't go away yet, because I need you before we move into the second panel, and then we're going to move into a 75-minute lunch break. So don't go away yet. I promise you'll get a chance to refuel. We have another Slido poll. I'd like to ask you to get busy on Slido, if I may. And what is the question? Well, what are you ready to do to contribute to building climate resilience? This is all about you. This is one of the messages, what is meaningful for you, that's come out of these webinars. Are you ready to reconsider your lifestyle, change your habits? Are you ready to contribute to implementing local action in whichever way that is? Are you ready to engage in public conversations on the topic? Is that your thing? Or do you really think, nothing, even with everything I hear at this conference, my actions don't matter? I'm a bit concerned that my actions don't matter and it really is all at political or other levels. So what are you? Is it about lifestyle? Is it about local action and being a part of that, engaging in public conversations? Or, well, nothing, because actually I don't think my actions can really make a dent. So let's see, but not quite yet, of course. We'll come back to the results. Now, at the outset, we did hear, of course, from Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans, and he mentioned the European Climate Pact. And this is an EU-wide initiative which invites people and communities and organisations to participate in climate action to build a greener Europe. And he did say that we would be hearing much more about that, so let's take a closer look right now.
Pode ser clichê,
mas é verdade.
Mamy tylko jedną planetę.
Trebuie să o protejăm.
Dobbiamo prendercene cura.
да й показваме нашата любов.
Η κλιματική αλλαγή είναι μία από τις μεγαλύτερες απειλές που αντιμετωπίζουμε.
Mais nous pouvons tous agir.
Para ayudar a combatirlo.
Ja rakentaa parempi tulevaisuus.
Združimo moči.
Dela idéer med varandra.
Inspiriamoci l'un l'altro.
Um neue Lösungen zu finden.
The European Climate Pact is here.
Y estamos impacientes por empezar.
Az Európai Éghajlati Paktum mindenkinek szól.
Chaque action compte.
No ambition too small.
Jer možemo svladati ovu krizu.
Maar alleen als we het samen doen.
Maar zing.
Together.
Samen.
Zusammen.
So, will you join us?
President von der Leyen and Executive Vice President Timmermans could not have put it any better. Making Europe the first climate-neutral continent is the greatest challenge and opportunity of our lifetime. As the Vice Mayor for Environment and Climate in the city of Stockholm, I know that cities have a vital role to play in this transition. After all, cities consume over 80% of Europe's energy and account for more than 70% of Europe's CO2 emissions. And everyone has the work to do now. In Stockholm, we are on our way to becoming fossil fuel-free and climate positive by 2040. The Climate Pact in Stockholm already gathers 300 companies who want to be part of this transition. As an ambassador for the European Climate Pact, I will not sit still until I have spread Stockholm's knowledge, experience, and enthusiasm for ambitious climate action to cities all over Europe. We have a chance to make the European Green Deal a real turning point for our people and our planet, and I cannot wait to make it happen with you.
I'm Francesca Dandolo, and I live in Paris. As a former councillor of the city's Centre District, I've always been engaged in nature protection. I developed awareness for biodiversity with neighborhood residents by initiating the project of a green corridor to restore local bird population, insects, and small mammals in the city. The objective was to present the project and convince the local council. Developing and linking green corridors all over the area can be replicated all over the city and internationally on a local level. Over the past 10 years, I have organized 2 community gardens where more than 200 residents have participated. The City of Paris offers digital tools to amplify local initiatives. Being a European Union Climate Pact ambassador will enable me to inform and rally grassroots organizations, local and regional councils around the biodiversity initiatives the EU can help with.
Did you know that heating and cooling account for half of the EU's energy consumption and is still mostly fossil fuel based? Did you know that 34 million Europeans can't heat their home properly? I'm Maureen Cornelis, and I'd like to be one of the first European Climate Pact ambassadors. I was born in France, but now I live with my family in Turin, in northern Italy, a beautiful city staring over the Alps. But Turin has also a strong industrial past, and the air quality is one of the worst in Europe. My goal is to make sure that everyone unites to reverse the trend, starting with energy and buildings. I want to give people simple, easy to understand tools so that they can make the best choices. The most sustainable options will not only be good for them and their family, but also soft for their wallets and better for the planet. I will build on my professional experience as an energy consumer rights expert and my personal experience as a young mother. Together, we can get people out of energy poverty and make sure that our children live on a healed planet.
Dear European friends, my name is Fons Jansen and I'm active for climate since 4 years. It started with my young board membership at the Royal Dutch Chemical Association. I hosted field trips and also public discussions on chemical topics. From that, I got engaged into the Dutch Climate Agreement, and with young professionals from various sectors, we created ECCA, a foundation of young professionals for sustainability. With ECCA, I helped giving advice as a team member for the industry table, and afterwards, I became a board member to do the community management. From the Dutch Climate Agreement, I actually got more engaged afterwards locally and also on European level. For instance, I helped setting up the basis for youth participation in the regional energy strategies, and on European level, I co-founded the Green Deal for Youth network. It's a grassroots network that hosted brainstorm sessions on the European Climate Pact. We contributed to youth summits in the Netherlands, Sweden and Cyprus on the European Green Deal, and we are now getting engaged in the just transition regions. With my ambassadorship, I would like to give these activities a boost with my communities. And I think with the European Climate Pact, we can really make sure that all stakeholders get involved. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Martin Halseth and I'm a 26-year-old rower from Norway. I'm qualified for the Tokyo Olympics, but as you know, back in March I had to go back home to my hometown of Ålesund. There I spent a lot of time in the water. My favorite hobby is freediving. And I could see a lot of trash that's not belonging there. So I thought that maybe I should start this crowdfunding campaign, which I've been thinking of for a while. And so I said that for every euro I get in, I'll pick 1 kilo of trash, take a picture of the trash and show it to the people that gave me the money. So this, the wheel kept on turning. So now I've picked over 6 tons of trash and I'm aiming to pick more. But this problem is way bigger than me. So I brought this underwater photographer named Vasco Pignol with me. And he's been documenting the stuff that I find to try to make some waves, try to make some change and see that the problem is worldwide.
Thank you to all those fantastic ambassadors there. For me, that really genuinely is the beauty of Europe. So let's check in now with the results from Slido. We asked, what are you ready to do to contribute to building climate resilience? And we've got the majority of people there, 64%, saying engage in public conversations on the topic. Close behind, reconsider my lifestyle, my habits. Close behind that, contribute to implementing local action, and 3%, and that's the thing with Slido, you want to invite everybody, don't you, to understand why they voted as they did, because I think I can say when I've listened to all of the energy and the passion of those ambassadors in their video there, that personal actions really do matter, not least having this phenomenal multiplying effect. So just ahead of our second panel of this second session, we're just going to listen in to a few more messages that have come out of the webinars leading up to this high-level event, and this one is delivered by one of its champions, Sergio Castellari. So have a listen.
Hello, ECCA community. My name is Sergio Castellari and I work at INGV in Bologna, Italy. I've been the champion of the webinar, Nature as a Solution for Resilience, Mitigation and Sustainable Development. This webinar was about the Nature-Based Solution, or NBS. NBS work with nature. They preserve nature and fight climate change with adaptation and mitigation. Nature-based solutions are an umbrella concept to describe different solutions working with nature to solve societal challenges. The ECCA community will work together to generate, co-create, and share climate knowledge with information to support those delivering climate action on the ground. We are committed to science for society and bring together local and indigenous knowledge with science to inform practical solutions. Nature-based solutions are a good example of how different actors and type of knowledge can come together to shape climate solutions.
And thank you very much to Sergio there. And now let's have a look at what we're going to be talking about in our next panel. So we've heard all along now that this creating connections and this sharing knowledge and collaborating is critical. We know that. Hopefully we're going to put a bit more meat on the bones and find out some examples of exactly how that can be done. So let's have a look at who the speakers in this panel are. Here you have them. So we've got a lovely panel there, and what I always like to say is it's fabulous to see a panel with just women on board. So it's my pleasure now to introduce the moderator of this panel. She is also a fellow female moderator. Her name is Sally Stevens. She's Communications and Engagement Manager at the Institute of Environmental Analytics, which is based at Reading University, but she also leads on COP26 communications and also engagement for the UK Space for Climate group. So the perfect person to be handling these four speakers. So Sally, so lovely. You've got a nice slot here because everybody's with you because they know they're going to get to fill their bellies in just a moment. What are you hoping to get out of this panel? How does it build on what we've heard up until this point?
Thank you, Katrina. Well, we have a panel of passionate voices for you. If we could only bottle the energy and commitment of our guests and export it around the world, we'd have climate change on the run already. Now, throughout the ECCA 21 webinars, we have heard that building trusted and respectful collaborations is at the centre of successful climate adaptation schemes. And we're going to hear now about some very impressive examples that we can learn from and use as our inspiration as we discuss creating connections and collaborations for climate adaptation action. First, from the beautiful city of Ghent, we are pleased to have with us Tina Heiser, who tells me that her busy role as Deputy Mayor has enabled her to put into practice what she has been preaching for so long. Tina, not only do you have a very successful climate adaptation project from Ghent to share with us, it's also making your city look even prettier.
The last point you made is really important. Climate adaptation makes a city prettier and life much better. It's good to live in a city with lots of green, with water, with more public space for people. You should implement it anyway, climate change or not. I'll give you only one example of a collaboration in Ghent, but there are of course many. I want to tell you about the Geveltuin Brigade, and I will translate this as Sideway Gardens Gang. The idea is simple. People who want more green in front of their house call the gang. They come, lift some stones from a sideway and plant climbing vines and flowers, and it's done. The city pays for the plants and materials, the volunteers do the work. The people take care of the garden. In Ghent, we have this citizens' budget. The people can decide about which projects they want to fund. The Sideway Gardens Gang applied for startup money from the citizens' budget. That got them going. And it may sound like a small-scale thing, but it's not. In the last years, more than 1,500 sideway gardens were planted that way. Little gardens are popping up everywhere in the city. Collaborating with civil society like the gang is a cornerstone of our approach. We have dozens of collaborations like that.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Tina. So from the community level, we move up to the policy level. So what connections are being made at European, national, regional and local level to support inspirational schemes like Ghent? Well, let's hear from Carmen Madrid Gonzalez, an expert in regional development, research and innovation at the Joint Research Centre at the European Commission.
Thank you very much. Well,
we want to make some bridge between, the EU horizon missions and regional development and regional policies. EU missions offer a concrete opportunity for multi-level governance. What it is about multi-level governance, it's very important. All the missions, and in particular climate adaptation, have helped for a place-based implementation, rolling out the mission in cooperation with regions and regional smart specialization strategy, which are, the strategy for regional development that was linked to the regional policy, but now it's wider than this and linked to the Green Deal objective. This will open a new opportunities for regions and countries participating in these missions to strengthen place-based innovation clusters, upscales, local innovation, access innovation fundings, international networkings, and also interregional collaboration, which is very important as well. All the missions will be tested, it has been present in the plan. And it is about co-create, and it is about scale up innovative solutions, lighthouse demonstrations in regions, projects in regions. It is about networks, which will develop new products, new service, new solutions relevant for achieving the missions objectives. In 4 lines, the smart specialization strategy can embrace the mission goals as part of its bottom-up vision and priority. This is new from bottom-up dimension. The local authorities can mobilize local SMEs, firms, startups, entrepreneurs, community actors, users. These actors can participate and co-shape the mission in view of optimizing local societal economy value. The regional and local authorities can create attractive framework conditions for place-based experimentation. We have the social innovation dimension, community engagement. All these elements are very important to the implementation. The regional and local authorities can build on interregional collaboration, launch new ones. We know that some regions have the same criteria, same characteristic, and solution can be also export. This is also very important. For entrepreneurs and local SMEs, social communities, the active participation in testing and co-adapting innovative solutions to climate change, new mobility cities, or other things, will provide first mover advantages in future economic and societal system. Service-related firms can learn at first hand from local adaptation and solutions to value creation, creating quality jobs, not just locally, but also on the international market, given the global market potential of sustainable and local solutions. In few words, the Joint Research Center may be a support for his scientific expertise and tools understanding the systemic challenge that all the missions are facing. Also, the place-based implementation linked to the smart specialization strategy. It is about synergies, it is about co-creation, it is about a win-win situation, and it is about a dynamic process. And finally, we can also be a support on all the methodological process on monitoring and evaluation of these elements. That's all for me. Thank you very much to invite the European Commission.
Thank you, Carmen. And that leads us nicely on to Celine Phillips, coordinator of the Multilateral Initiatives team in the European and International Directorate at the French Agency for Ecological Transition. And I can tell you that Celine has attended every ECCA conference since it started in 2013. So welcome back, Celine.
Thank you, Sally. I'm delighted to be here with you all today. Hello, everybody. Yes, I was in Hamburg, Copenhagen, Glasgow, Lisbon, and I learned so much at each ECCA conference. And I also met very many people who then went on to be collaborators. And so it's always been a very special part of the year for me because I was experiencing what we at ADEM do. So it's our job to facilitate connections and collaborations between different stakeholders on different environmental issues, including climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation, So I'm delighted to be here today. I'm going to try to show you concretely what we do at ADEM to connect and facilitate collaborations. Maybe the first example is in the agricultural sector. And why? Because it's an important economic sector for France, and it's impacted by climate change. So we've been working with the agricultural sector and scientists for quite a few years now, trying to connect them up, because the agricultural sector needs decision-making tools and information. And we're very proud to have been able to fund regional observatories of the impacts of climate change on agriculture, which are used by the chambers of agriculture in different regions of France, and feed into decision-making in these regions. And they use observations of climate change and the impacts of climate change on agriculture. And more recently, we've been funding projects looking at how to use climate change projections coming out of the climate models to feed into decision-making for the future. So, for example, we co-funded a LIFE project called AgriAdapt, which has now developed a very good platform. I recommend you go and have a look, with indicators that can be used at the level of a farm. And we're following up on that now, funding a new project to carry on having an even more local approach to the indicators to make them even more relevant for local farms in France. So that's the agricultural sector. Of course, I think you all know that, in fact, the whole agri-food chain is impacted by climate change. And so in 2019, we developed a methodology that's actually taking a holistic approach to climate change adaptation at all the levels of the agri-food chain, from farm to fork, looking at also the logistics of transport, distribution, storing food. So lots of different levels of the chain. We developed a methodology which takes a holistic approach to the impact analysis, to the strategic analysis, and to the development of the climate change adaptation pathway. And we're happy that this year we're going to be experimenting this methodology further with different level stakeholders in the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region in France. So there's just a few examples of how we're creating connections and collaborations between scientists and stakeholders on the ground.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker is Katarzyna Smetek, who, as president of the Polish Youth Climate Council and an ambassador of the European Climate Pact, is bringing together not only the student voices of her city, but of young people across Poland, connecting them directly with their ministers and government. So Katarzyna, tell us more about this incredibly energetic young movement.
Thank you very much, Sally. Thank you very, very much for the invitation. I think that very often youth is perceived just as the social group or age group in our society, but I think it's way more. And that's why this movement, this energetic movement, as you said, is so powerful, and it's so important in understanding actually what are the connections and collaborations between young people and decision makers. So I really think that youth and young people are actually agents of change, and they are decision makers of tomorrow. But to make sure that they will be good ones, so good decision makers of tomorrow, they actually have to inherit good practices from decision makers of today. So that's why such bodies as the Youth Climate Council have been created to make sure that young people have the opportunity, have the platform to interact with decision makers, with politicians, with ministers, with people who make the decisions on their behalf very often, and also who make the decisions that will impact their future directly, because it will be us young people who will live in in the world that we create today, but it will be also our children and grandchildren who will actually feel the impact of today's decisions. And the example of the Youth Climate Council is, in my perspective, very, very important. And that's why I also think that these collaborations are so crucial in our world. So the first Youth Climate Council that have been created in Europe was actually Danish Youth Climate Council. And on this example, Polish activists, including me, actually initiated the creation of the Youth Climate Council in Poland. We proposed the creation, the establishment of the body that could provide a platform for youth to share the ideas and opinions with decision makers. So the first actually solution how to include young people is to make sure that they have the space to share their knowledge with the decision makers, because it's also important to remember that youth are experts and they have a great background to actually share their experience. We think that, okay, they are very young, they don't have a lot of knowledge, but that's not true. We live in a changing world. We know how to adapt to climate change, but we also know how to fight that. So that's why we should share it with decision makers. But another solution that the Youth Climate Council is helping to include and establish is actually advising the ministers. So it's not only sharing knowledge, and it's not only about sharing experience, but it's also about making sure that our perspective and our point of view is included in legislations that are being worked on now, that is included in the proposals that are going through different ministries, and making sure that the youth voice is actually included in the decisions that will impact their future. So that's why it's so important. But I also think that youth, they have also this great power to hold the decision makers accountable. They have this power to actually motivate them and make sure that they have this power to work and have these ambitious plans. And I think that it's crucial in regards to, for example, the European Green Deal, in regard to European Climate Pact, and in regards to achieving climate neutrality by the European Union in 2050, because we cannot do it without youth. And creating these mechanisms to make sure that young people have the opportunity to talk to decision makers is crucial, because even though the Youth Climate Council is the advisory body to the Ministry of Climate in Poland and in Denmark, we actually have a great space to interact with other bodies. So we have meetings with the President of Poland, we have meetings with city mayors, we have meetings with different political parties, we have just this different collaborations and cooperations with people who impact different sectors. So it's not only about the cooperation in this understanding of intergenerational work, but it's about intersectional and interperspectival perspective, and making sure that youth is everywhere where the most important decisions are being taken.
Fantastic. That's really inspiring, and we're so pleased that you've been able to join us with the decision makers here today. So I'm afraid that because of time, I'm going to limit you to very, very short answers. But now I want to ask you, Celine, about the value of celebrating the success of projects.
It's something that at ADEM we find really facilitates action, is to know that somebody else, in fact, has already succeeded in addressing the same challenge that you're facing. And we're a big fan. So for local authorities, there's the European Energy Awards, which many of you will probably have heard of before. Which we're particularly fond of at ADEM, and we have worked to make it a tool which we call Synergie in French, to emulate success in mitigation. And so now for adaptation, the challenge was to see, well, so what can we do to celebrate success in adaptation? And in 2014, we developed what we called the National Trophy for Climate Change Adaptation for local authorities. And that worked really well because we had some really interesting local authority projects coming in. And in 2014, it was the city of Rouen who won with some innovative urban planning methods to address the different challenges they're facing locally. In 2016, it was a regional natural park, the Vercors, who are having to face the challenge of reducing snow cover, and that's changing the whole economic situation in the Vercors. And so they were connecting all the local players to find the alternative and develop four-season tourism. So the trophies, they're a success. We've even now developed a trophy at the Mediterranean level. It's currently our 3rd edition, and we'll be able to announce the winners very soon. And so coming back to the European Energy Awards, so we've decided also, that started a few years back now, to integrate adaptation into this, into the French version of the European Energy Awards, and that's also working very well.
Excellent, thank you very much. So following on from that, Tina, can I ask you, what's the most important benefit of using established community networks to partner on fresh initiatives and to generate that feeling of success and that feeling of celebration?
Well, the advantage is that those networks act as ambassadors for climate adaptation. They spread the word so much faster. In Ghent, for example, we have a network called Green Track. It is a collaboration of almost all cultural institutions in the city, and they have more than 30 members from theatres to museums. As a city, we partly subsidize their work, and Green Track has created a very active community. The culture sector is now one of the main ambassadors of climate action in Ghent, and they, of course, reach thousands and thousands of people every year. They take many climate actions themselves, and they challenge each other in going even further.
I love that idea, Tina, of tapping into existing connections to create even more connections, particularly like thinking creatively, like tapping into that theatrical supporting group. So that's fantastic. Thank you. What a great inspiring example. Carmen, so what's the most valuable thing that the research and the policy community can learn from these public-facing connections?
Well, I think, as I was saying also before, that it's not only an element of research, it's also to have this idea of innovation, so to find solution for adaptation. And I think probably it has been said with the example we just listened to, it's about to involve all stakeholders. So it's about research, of course, we need that, but we also need that research serve public service and public policy. And now the point is how to put a bridge between all these words and to be sure that the political cycle take on board all these elements. And to do that, we need some tools like strategies and alignments in strategies to be sure that we will be effective and we will ensure synergy between all the acts and events we want. And this is very, very, very important, because we know that Europe is working very hard in research. It's now the case to transform this research in solutions and to let them know and to be more effective and to transfer this solution in places and to implement it and to be sure that citizens and politicians are part of it. This is the point, I think, the important thing.
Yeah, a really vital connection there, isn't it? The citizens and policymakers. Katarzyna, you've been chosen to represent Poland at the Pre-COP Youth Summit in Milan. Congratulations. That's at the end of September. How would you like the European Commission to connect and engage with all the European youth representatives before then?
Thank you very much for these words. I think that young people in the EU have so much potential, but it's often not used yet. So we know that there are so many motivating young people within our community, but we don't know how to use it. And there is of course the European Climate Pact. We know that there are young people who have been chosen as ambassadors, for example, as I did. There are young people who will be going to Milan for pre-COP youth event, as you said. And there are also a lot of Europeans. And I think the best way actually to also connect it to our today's theme, so collaborations and cooperation, is actually creating this platform for young people to make sure that they have enough knowledge how to interact with decision makers on European level. They know how to share their experience with other youth activists. They have this space to actually interact with decision makers, but also with young people. And another way to use our potential, so young people, is also include us meaningfully in the European decision making. So pre-COP is a negotiation process. So if we know that there will be EU delegations, and we know there will be, maybe just using the fact that there will be young Europeans taking part in Youth Summit, maybe that's a perfect opportunity to actually include us in the EU delegations to make sure that we can share our experience with other decision makers from all over the world. We can be trendsetter as the EU, as we did with climate neutrality by 2050. We can show the world that we can make these changes. But I also think that in a long-term solution, so just making sure that it doesn't end with pre-COP or even COP26 in Glasgow, just making sure that this platform of cooperation and collaboration is actually there to make sure that there is a person, like a focal point of a contact person indicated from the Commission or from the Parliament or from any other body on the European level, that young people can contact directly to share their experience and knowledge and ideas, how to improve our ambitious goals, how to include young people in this various processes, because I really think that we need this bridge, because both of the groups, both the decision makers, MEPs, commissioners, and everybody included in the European processes are very motivated, but so do young people. We are all motivated, but we don't have this bridge that would connect us and even enhance this motivation. And I think in case of adaptation is crucial, because we cannot really lead to adaptation plans without this bridge, without this cooperation and collaboration.
Fantastic, and a great message that we're really pleased to have heard here. Include young people in that European decision-making process. So I think we have time for one last really quick question. So in just one word, can you each give the commissioners and all of us at ECCA 21 just one essential ingredient for a successful collaborative climate adaptation initiative? One word, Tina.
Focus on the good life.
Thank you. And Carmen?
Synergies.
And Celine?
Keep the long term in view while you're addressing today's challenges. So that's more than one word, sorry.
We'll let you off. And Katarzyna?
Inclusion.
Fantastic. That's a really powerful message to end our panel on. And thank you so much to all of you for sharing your expertise, your experience, and your very valuable time with us today. I've certainly very much enjoyed connecting with you all, and I look forward to being able to meet face to face, hopefully, for our next collaboration very soon. Back to you, Katrina.
Thank you very much, Sally, and it was a brilliant discussion. And by the way, well done for getting one word out of those brilliant speakers, and to the speakers for getting one word out, because that's a rare one. You say one word, please, and then you get 5 sentences. So absolutely well done for that. Now, at the beginning, you talked about bottling their passion. So for you, what's the main thing that you would make sure you'd stick into that bottle that you've heard from that session?
I think what we've really heard about today is that channeling the energy and enthusiasm from the community level up, from bottom up, to meet those wider objectives that we're seeing at a policymaker level. But without that enthusiasm, that willingness, and that inclusion from the community, we're not going to change anything. We're not going to meet our Paris Agreement targets. So it's so fantastic to hear so many successful examples of where it is working.
Yes, and indeed, I think what you say there echoes. So the 3% there in that previous slider who said, I'm not sure my actions make a difference. I think probably you would reiterate, yes, Katrina, they do, really. We need that enthusiasm at absolute ground level. And a couple of bits I took away, which was this issue of both testing and co-adapting local solutions, critical. Sometimes we think solution and we sort of stop there, but a solution doesn't stop there, does it? You need to constantly test and share it and evolve it. So that was very critical. And lovely from Tina, right at the start from the city of Ghent. Climate adaptation makes a city prettier. Implement it anyway, climate change or not. For goodness sake, those of you who are busy tweeting, you can see I have less time. That's a really, really nice one to put out there. So I thank you so much, Sally, and to all our fabulous women on that last panel before the break. And in just a moment, we can all take a break. We've got, we do have 75 minutes. You can grab some food, you can grab some air, you can tweet your brilliance. Don't forget, ECCA 2021. We're going to see you back here at 1400 on the dot, no later than that, refreshed and refueled. Of course, that's 1400 CEST. That's very important. And I'm going to kick off this afternoon's third and final session in this epic adventure, and that one is called Inspiring Action for Societal Transformation. So that follows on from our other two sessions. We've got two more panel debates. Now you've got to be there because we've got a host of fabulous speakers. At the start, we have the director of the Institute for Climate Impact Research, that's Johan Rockström. Absolutely tune in to hear from him. We've got a member of the Fridays for Future Climate Justice League. So let's see how much that we heard there from Poland, from Katarzyna, that's going to resonate with our friend from Germany, who's going to join that last panel. We've got the Belgian State Secretary for Economic Recovery and Strategic Investments, and more. Miss it absolutely at your peril. See you very, very soon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.